session. So let's talk about improvisation. Now, there are, I like to break down improvisation into different elements. Now, typically when learning improvisation, students, the way I learn and the way that many other students learn is a teacher will say, here's a scale, this is the scale that you use to improvise on, and well, go ahead and improvise. So you might have a F minor chord, and it's like, okay, here's your F minor, here's your F minor scale, or, just go ahead and start improvising on that, okay? Or here's F minor pentatonic. Right? Go ahead and improvise. Now, the problem with that approach is that it's giving you one piece of the pie, right? It's giving you one of the elements of improvisation, but it's not giving you all of the elements, and it's not talking about all of the elements of improvisation, right? Now, what I mean by that is I like to think of improvisation as having 4 elements. So now you'll notice here in this pie chart that rhythm and notes take up the biggest amount of the pie, right? But you see that notes is really only about 40% of what makes up improvisation. Now, what I mean by that is notes are important, of course, when you improvise, but if you have rhythm that's just flat and uninteresting, well, guess what? It doesn't matter if you play the right notes. The rhythm is just going to be like... So you hear how that's like kind of boring, right? I mean, yeah, I'm playing the right notes, but it's not something that I would want to listen to. Now, let's say that I play the right notes and I also play them with some really good rhythm, all right? So, okay? So now there, you're probably thinking like, okay, that sounds better, but it's still kind of missing a little something, isn't it? And that is the comping and dynamics. Now, comping, this is where we're actually going to do something with the left hand rather than just play it and just let it sit there. And dynamics is obviously our dynamics. Piano to forte, loud to soft, soft to loud, right? So now listen to it. Right? So now, still you might say, oh, I'm really into that kind of improvisation. Fine. But by and large, that sounds better than the first example. Okay? So whether you're into that style, whether you think it's, oh, there's too many notes or whatever, let's not worry about that right now. Okay? Right now, we're just trying to think about the main elements of improvisation. Because once we get into the nuances of style and all of that, that's a little bit more advanced, and that's going to be more of what we'll be discussing and working on in our advanced improvisation. Okay? So this is just beginner. We want to break it down into those 4 elements, and we want to think about those 4 elements of improvisation. So now I have some music here that we can start working on. Let's talk about those notes of improvisation. I also have a jam track here that we're going to be working on, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 3 different styles. Now, a lot of times when working on improvisation, I have focused on one style. So like we're going to do rock improvisation, or we're going to do jazz improvisation, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually give you 3 different styles. We're going to be using these drum tracks, and you will have these as a play along that you'll be able to jam with and practice with this week, okay? And again, of course, that's if you are a member of the site or you have purchased the Bootcamp. All right, so now, when we're trying to choose notes to play, you see I have 2 chords here. I have an F minor chord to a B flat chord. The very first easy way of starting with notes to play is you start with your chord tones, okay? So here I have, if you notice, I have F, A flat, and C. Those are my chord tones. I have this other note in here as well, G and C on the B flat. That is my 9th. Okay? So these 4 notes right here, okay, Those 4 notes right there give me the basic notes that I can use and start with improvisation. Now, this is what's really cool about having those 4 notes, is that when we have 4/4 time, okay, so time signature of 4/4, that would mean that we would have 8 eighth notes, correct? All right, so 8 eighth notes or 4 quarter notes. Very typically, we play in 4/4 time. That's probably by far the most common time signature is 4/4. All right, so and a lot of times, especially when playing jazz, you might have 2 chords per measure. So that might mean that you're moving from an F minor to a B flat all within 1 measure. So that means that we could take these 4 notes and put them into eighth notes. 4 eighth notes, 4 eighth notes. So if I was moving from F minor to B flat all within 1 measure, I could do that. So you see how I'm just moving from those 4 notes to the 4 notes. Okay? So having that 4-note pattern, or having only 4 notes to choose from, is really nice, and it makes it a little bit easier for us as improvisers because now we could just focus on 4 notes. Now, typically when we are learning this, like, you know, chord scale relationship, and that's kind of like what we call it. So like if we say, oh, it's F minor, we can use like an F Dorian scale, or we can use a F natural minor scale, or use an F minor pentatonic scale. If we have that F natural minor scale, well, what is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes right there. Now it's a lot more notes to choose from. And you'll also notice that a lot of times you will see things like avoid notes. You might see the scale written out, and it might have certain notes that says, like, don't play those notes. You want to avoid those notes, which isn't really a good name. A better name would be like, you know, stay away from, or don't land on, all right? So like certain notes you don't want to land on. So like if I'm playing F minor, I probably don't want to like start or end on that flatted 6, all right? But to play it, you know, to use that note is fine, but I don't want to end on that note. All right, so anyway, my point is that 7 notes is more than 4, isn't it? So when you're trying to figure out how to improvise, you're much better off starting simple. Start with those 4 notes. So immediately off the bat, almost in any style of music and almost on any chord, you could take the first 3 notes of the chord, the triad, and then add in the 9th, and there you go. You have 4 notes to work with. So if I'm playing G minor, add in the 9th. If I'm playing C major, add in the 9th. I'm playing D major chord, add in the 9th. Now, as a beginning improviser, you want to begin and start with those triads. This is why, like in my Piano Essentials program, I work so heavily on learning the scale and then learning those primary chords, those primary triads, the major, the 1, 4, 5, in inversions. Those triads, the triad primer lesson, really, really important, because if you don't know those chord tones and you can't move around those different chord tones in different inversions, then you really don't yet have the tools to be able to improvise, all right? Working from the scale to chord, that chord scale relationship is too difficult to begin with. And it's an approach that I actually don't use with beginning improvisers, and it's an approach I kind of disagree with for beginning improvisers. I think that for beginning improvisers, we need to make it much easier for you and make it so that the notes that you're going to play are all going to work all of the time. This is why we choose the triad with the 9th. Okay? So now the 9th is going to work on a minor chord. It's also going to work on that major chord, that same 9th. You might wonder, well, why is it called a 9th? Why isn't it called 2? We're not going to get into that. That's a whole theory thing. You can take a look at musictheoryonline.com if you're interested in some of that music theory stuff. But we call it the 9th, okay? So, all right, so anyway, but you can call it 2 as well. It really doesn't matter at this point. All right, so here are my 4 notes, F minor and then B flat. And I just have some very simple chords here in my left hand. So now that was one side of things, was the notes, right? The next side is rhythm. Now, when we're working on rhythm, I like to use a vocalization approach, all right? Now, this is a vocalization approach that I created for Piano with Willie and Jazzedge. and it works extremely well. Now, sometimes students feel a little bit self-conscious vocalizing rhythms. Trust me, though, it works, right? So if I take this rhythm right here, what's great about this vocalization approach is that it works both straight and swung. So let me do it straight first of all. It'd be da, dee, ba, da, dee, ba, da, da. All right, if I were to do it swung, it'd be da, dee, ba, da, dee, ba, da, da. All right. Now, if you want more help with rhythm and vocalization, that's where in the Piano with Willie site, take a look at the Mastering Rhythms lessons. So I go through all of the rhythmic vocalization, okay? So again, I'm not trying to sell you on all of this stuff, but a lot of times students are asking me, well, where do I find this? Where should I go? Well, that's why I'm telling you right now. If you need help with rhythm and vocalization, all of those lessons have already been done, and it's called Mastering Rhythms, and it's available on the Piano with Willie site, okay? All right, so we want to work on vocalizing rhythm. Now, you notice that these rhythms right now like kind of have this little X. That basically means that it's really, there's no note, okay? It could be whatever note you want. It looks like it's on a B.